This topic can seem like the most boring of the lot on this module. It can also seem like the most unnecessary because you might think, well, I know how to write things to people. I do it all the time. But I consistently find that students come back to me saying, Anthea, that week about letters and emails was the one that I have used the most. It's the one that I took the most away from, and it's the one whose usefulness kind of surprised me the most. This particularly happens when students are on placement and they find that they're having to use more and more daily written, email, and sometimes even letter communication. So yes, some of it might be a wee bit dry and a wee bit boring, but it's super important, so please try to bear with it. I'm going to get you working straight away with a nice, easy task to ease you in. Email from a colleague to a line manager will appear on the video soon. I've packed it full of errors and problems. I'd like you to pause the video on it and note down what you think the problems are. Have a think too about whether the problems fall into categories. For example, one category might be spelling and typos. Again, as always, do pause the video and do the task because you will not regret it. You will learn more if you engage. Okay, let's get going. How did you get on? Did you come up with some categories? Did you mention any of these? Let's look at the email copy again and highlight where each of these categories comes into play. Here's our email and a key for the categories of problem. So each one has a wee colour attached to it. I'll highlight examples of each category in turn. Why not pause the video every now and again to review your own notes and see how close you came to what I was saying? So, you can identify very well where email communication has gone wrong. No, I can't read your minds, but my guess is that you identified a fair bit in that last task. But can you avoid making some of the same types of mistakes, albeit not quite as glaringly as our hypothetical colleague Anna did, in your own emails? Let's take a more conceptual and technical look at the issues. Email communication is absolutely key to all our lives, so it's absolutely vital to get it right. Wait a minute, you might be saying. Email is so last century, I never use it. Remember the importance of context, though. Social media has long since overridden email in the personal context, for sure. But in the professional context, email is still the key vehicle of communication, and it's likely to remain so for some time yet. Social media and email are not genres, they're different modes. They don't have norms per se, but the genres we use them to create do have norms. So messaging or emailing your friend has different norms from emailing your line manager, as we have seen clearly from Anna's faux pas. As a rule of thumb, when using emails in professional communication, at least in the first email in an exchange, think of them as a piece of formal communication, unless there's a good reason not to. So what's a good reason not to? A company may have a particularly informal house style, and if so, it's fine to mirror that. In fact, it's important to mirror that. Regardless of style and register, always use standard English dialect. In an email exchange, the level of formality may lessen as the exchange progresses. Let the more authoritative party lead on that. Some aspects of email and letter writing are similar across the two modes. Make sure you take good notes as we discuss some of the complexities in making these choices. So, how should you address the person you're writing to? I'm going to show you a list of salutations. This is just a posh word for how you address a person when writing to them. I'd like you to pause the video, rearrange the terms in order from the most informal to the most formal, and draw a line where you think the boundary is between those salutations that are only appropriate for emails, and very different levels of formality of emails at that, and those that are appropriate for letter writing. Again, the individual choices will depend on the function and level of formality of the letter. Okay, so you're rearranging in order from the most informal to the most formal, and you're differentiating between what's okay for letters and what's only okay for emails. Let's see if you and I came up with the same list. Here's my list. When writing a letter for professional purposes, you must never go any more informal than using the addressee's two names, as in Dear Simone Smith. And the same applies to sign-offs. In any case where you have to use your addressee's two names, mirror that when you sign off by using both your names. All the earlier salutations on the list are only appropriate for emails. As I said though, it depends on the function and formality of the email. The first two on the list are only appropriate for emails between friends. So in fact, you'll rarely see these in emails at all. In a work email context, there's actually a bit of overlap with what you'll see in letter salutations. If you're emailing someone in a different company for the first time, it is always appropriate to go for first name and surname. If they respond to you, signing off with just their first name, you're good to go with just using their first name from then on. The rule of thumb is let your addressee lead on that. In the UK, where we have a relatively informal working culture, it is generally fine to address someone in the same company as you by their first name only, unless common practice is different from that. So how should we sign off a letter or email? Let's do the same task as before. Rearrange the list of sign-offs from the most informal to the most formal, and draw a line where you think the boundary of appropriateness for signing off on a professional letter is. So again, you're doing the same thing as before, putting them in order of formality and sticking a line between what you think is only appropriate for email and what you think is appropriate for letters. Did you find that list trickier to rearrange? I actually hope you did. I say that because there's more going on in the differences between these sign-offs than just their level of formality. We'll come back to that in a minute. First of all, here is my list. You must not go any more informal than yours sincerely in a letter for professional purposes. Every other sign-off on the list can only be used for emails, not for letters. And again, within that, different ones are appropriate for different contexts. In the case of this list, there isn't any overlap. Yours sincerely is really too formal for an email in any context, so there's a clear distinction between the two parts of the list. Staying with letters for a moment, there's also a convention of some salutations and sign-offs travelling in pairs. If you identify the addressee in the salutation, as in if you use their name, you should use yours sincerely. If you don't identify them, for example, if you use dear madam, dear sir, or to whom it may concern, you should use yours faithfully. For more formal email communication, for example, where you're emailing someone in a different company, especially for the first time, you really shouldn't go any more informal than many thanks. So what's the crack with many thanks anyway? It's a bit different to the other forms of sign-off, isn't it? Do you remember looking at presupposition in the language and communication module last year? Let me remind you what it is. Using many thanks to sign off an email can be, and often is, a form of presupposition. If the key point of your email is to actually thank someone for something they have already done, clearly many thanks is a perfectly logical sign-off to use. If you pay attention, though, to the emails that you receive, you'll notice that it is often used even where something is being requested, as in, it hasn't been done yet. You need to be very careful when using it like this. Where you're pretty sure that the person you're requesting to do something will be cool with doing it, and you're relatively certain that you can presume they will do it, using many thanks is wholly appropriate. If, however, you're asking for something that is less likely or more problematic, I would think twice about using many thanks in case it seems presumptive. And what about the various levels of regards we tend to send people in our work emails? We see these different sign-offs used almost interchangeably, as in, you could use any one of the three in many contexts. However, the choice is to do with something more than simple informational communication. It tends to be more about politeness or about the relationship, sometimes a changing relationship between the people involved in the email communication. Kind regards is the default, the neutral term, the most often used of the three. Remember connotations? Well, where something is a default or neutral choice, choosing something else will often carry connotations. So, using best regards can seem friendlier, more positive, or that the relationship is a closer one. I choose to use best regards as my default because I like to be positive. On the other hand, regards by itself is absolutely fine, but it can come across as colder than kind regards, or as if the relationship is a more distant one. And remember we talked about reflection and construction? You can use these various forms of sign-offs strategically to construct a relationship that's different from what the other person might presume. So, using best regards might make the person feel more positive, or that your relationship is stronger than they would have done otherwise, and using just regards could do the opposite. You will sometimes find that people slide up and down the regards scale depending on how an interaction is going. It really is a minefield, but it's a minefield you can navigate confidently if you bear all these nuances in mind. See you in the next video.